What would you do if the people closest to you betrayed your trust, stole from you, and tried to control your life? Jackson Carter was forced to live a lie for weeks, trapped in a coma, while those around him thought they'd won. But when he woke up, everything changed. The truth was about to come to light, and no one was safe from the consequences. Stay tuned to find out how a millionaire turned the tables on those who thought they could outsmart him. You won't believe what happens next. Before we start this incredible story, please take a moment to support us by liking this video, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where you are watching from. Your support means the world and helps us bring you more thrilling stories like this one. Now let's get started. The quiet hum of machines filled the air of room 407 at Rose Hill Medical Center. The man in the bed, covered in crisp white sheets, was none other than Jackson Carter, real estate mogul, tech investor, and rumored billionaire recluse. To the world, he was unconscious, trapped in a coma after a supposed yacht accident 3 weeks ago. But Jackson wasn't unconscious at all. He had heard every single word spoken around him since the day he was wheeled in. Jackson had staged the accident. He wanted to know the truth about the people in his life who genuinely cared and who saw him as nothing more than a dollar sign. What he didn't expect was the emotional roller coaster he was about to endure. Each day brought a new voice. His lawyer Gregory came in on day 2 to whisper about power of attorney and asset transfers. His fiancée Vanessa dropped by on day 5, sobbing crocodile tears, then answered a suspicious call from someone named Mark right by his bedside. His siblings debated whether to pull the plug just 3 days after his supposed coma began. But it wasn't until the night nurse arrived that everything shifted. Her name was Emily Walker, 26, new to Rose Hill, and always on the quiet night shift. Jackson noticed how gently she handled him, brushing his hair, adjusting his blanket, even humming softly as she worked. Unlike the others, she never talked about his wealth or the news headlines. Instead, she talked to him as if he could hear. "Hi, Mr. Carter," she whispered one night as she sat beside him. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I just needed to talk to someone, and you seem like the best listener I've got." Her voice was sincere, cracked slightly with emotion. Jackson strained to keep his breathing steady. "I lost my mom last year. Cancer. I thought I could handle the grief, but every time I walk into this room, it hits me. You remind me of her, strong but silent." Jackson felt something he hadn't felt in years. Connection. Not based on fame or fortune, but on vulnerability. Her words wrapped around him like warmth, something he'd been starved of. What shocked him the most was when she continued, "And I haven't told anyone this, but I think someone in this hospital is stealing from coma patients. I saw something last night. One of the nurses went through your personal drawer. I'm scared to report it." His heart pounded. Was this why some of his possessions had been moved? Had someone really been taking advantage of him while he laid there pretending to be helpless? The soft overhead lights in room 407 flickered slightly as the night shift began once more. Jackson Carter remained motionless, his breathing steady, eyes shut, just as they had been for the past 3 weeks. But his mind was anything but still. Emily's confession the night before had rattled him. The idea that someone, maybe multiple people, were stealing from vulnerable patients turned his stomach. But what could he do? Nothing. Not yet. He had to wait, observe, and trust Emily might be the key to getting answers. That evening, Emily returned with her usual quiet presence. She tucked in his sheets, adjusted the IV drip, and sat on the chair beside his bed with a deep sigh. "Another rough night," she murmured. "Mr. Carter, I know you probably think I'm crazy for talking to you like this. Maybe I am, but I feel like you're the only person who listens." Jackson wanted to scream, "I hear you!" But instead he remained still, eyes closed, muscles relaxed. It was torture. Emily's voice softened, a confession crawling out. "The nurse I mentioned yesterday, her name's Marlene. She's been here for years, everyone trusts her. But I saw her take something from your drawer again this morning. She didn't know I was watching." Jackson felt a surge of anger. His drawer, locked, or so he thought, contained his Rolex, a sealed envelope with private letters, and a USB with sensitive business files. He had planted them intentionally, curious to see who would snoop. Now he had confirmation. "I tried to tell the supervisor," Emily continued, "but they brushed me off, said Marlene was respected and I should mind my own business." There was a pause, then a sound Jackson didn't expect. Emily's soft sobs. "I don't want to lose this job," she whispered. "I need it. My brother's in rehab, and I'm covering his bills. This paycheck barely keeps us afloat, but I can't look the other way. It's not right." Jackson's heart ached. He had heard so many lies in this room, from family, friends, colleagues. And yet here was this young woman, burdened with responsibility, scared and cornered, but choosing honesty. A few moments passed in silence before Emily stood, brushing away tears. "I'll figure something out. I just needed to tell someone. Thank you, Mr. Carter." As she left, Jackson vowed something silently in his mind. "You won't lose this job, Emily. Not if I can help it." Just then, the door creaked open again. Different footsteps, heavier. A scent of expensive perfume filled the air. Vanessa. "Still playing dead, huh?" she muttered. Her voice had lost the sweetness she displayed on earlier visits. "Ugh, I can't keep this up much longer. Gregory said we need to act before your lawyers get suspicious." Jackson's heart skipped. She was in on something. With Gregory. "I swear," she whispered, almost hissing, "if you don't die soon, this whole plan goes up in flames." Jackson stayed still, but inside his rage burned. The walls were closing in, and he knew now that Emily wasn't just his only friend here. She might be his only hope. Jackson Carter had faced million-dollar deals, courtroom betrayals, and family squabbles over inheritance. But nothing compared to the helplessness he felt lying in that hospital bed, fully conscious but unable to speak, move, or act without blowing his cover. Vanessa's visit last night still echoed in his head. Her words had been venomous. "If you don't die soon, this whole plan goes up in flames." She had partnered with Gregory, his own lawyer, his lawyer of all people, the one man sworn to protect his interests. Jackson had always suspected Vanessa was more interested in his fortune than in him, but to hear her admit to plotting his death, that was a whole new level of betrayal. That morning, a new nurse came in to take his vitals. It wasn't Emily. This one had red lipstick, sharp movements, and a name tag that read Marlene. He'd heard the name before, Emily's voice trembling as she whispered it. "Time for your meds, Mr. Carter," Marlene said sweetly. Her tone didn't match the way she yanked the blanket off his legs or how roughly she moved his arm for the IV check. Jackson felt a sting, sharper than usual. Was it the needle or something more? "I heard the board's coming in for another evaluation," she muttered to herself as she scribbled in his chart. "Maybe this will all be over soon." Then just like that, she was gone. Later that night, Emily returned. Her presence was like a breath of fresh air. She did her rounds quietly, but as always, she lingered in room 407 a little longer. "I saw Marlene in here earlier," she said cautiously. "I don't trust her, Mr. Carter. Something about the way she looks at you gives me chills." She sat down and took his hand gently, like she needed courage. I think she's giving you something you're not supposed to have. I found a vial in the waste bin marked with a different patient ID. I know that's not right." Jackson felt a spike of fear. Are they trying to kill me slowly? Keep me sedated longer? Emily hesitated. "I've decided to file a formal complaint, even if it means they fire me. You deserve better. All patients do. I can't sit back anymore." Jackson wished more than anything that he could squeeze her hand, open his eyes, say, "You're right. Don't back down." But he couldn't risk exposing his ruse, not yet. Not while Vanessa and Gregory were still scheming. That night, he didn't sleep. His mind raced through possibilities. What if Marlene was poisoning him? What if Vanessa had arranged to pull the plug soon? He'd been so sure this plan would help him find the truth about those around him. But now that truth was coming fast, sharper than he expected, and it might kill him before he could do anything about it. But he had one thing on his side. Emily. And Jackson Carter wasn't about to let the only honest person left in his life fall into danger. Emily arrived earlier than usual that night. Her face was flushed and her hands trembled as she pulled on her gloves. Jackson noticed immediately. Even though his eyes remained closed, he had learned to anticipate her mood by the tone of her voice and the rhythm of her movements. "Mr. Carter," she whispered, "I did it. I reported her." Jackson's heart lifted. "I filed an anonymous tip with hospital administration this morning. I submitted the photo of the mismatched vial and the inventory records I copied last week. If they investigate properly, they'll find out Marlene's been swapping medications between patients. One of them died last month, Mr. Holloway, and I think Marlene made sure it happened." Jackson's stomach churned. He remembered hearing about that elderly patient down the hall who had unexpectedly passed. Everyone had called it natural causes. "I'm scared," Emily admitted. "If she finds out it was me, I don't know what she'll do." That's when she paused and looked around the room. "And there's something else." She pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward Jackson's still face, forgetting for a moment that he couldn't respond. "I found this while I was organizing your personal drawer last week. You had a USB hidden beneath the lining of the case." Jackson felt his breath nearly hitch. "I plugged it into my laptop at home," Emily continued, her voice now hushed and urgent. "It's a file full of voice memos, your memos, notes to yourself, plans. There's one you recorded the day before your accident. You said you were going to fake the coma to see who was trying to manipulate you. You even named Gregory." She leaned forward and whispered, "I believe you're awake, Mr. Carter. I know you're in there, and I think you need help." Jackson felt a strange mix of relief and panic. She knows. She really knows. Emily pulled back suddenly, startled by the sound of footsteps approaching. The door creaked open, and in walked Marlene, holding a tray. "Oh, Emily, didn't know you were still here," Marlene said, her smile tight. Emily stood, nerves barely contained. "Just finishing up my rounds, I'll be going now." But before she left, she gave Jackson's hand a gentle squeeze. It was subtle, but it said everything. "You're not alone anymore." Marlene's eyes followed her out the door, then flicked back to Jackson. Her smile dropped. "You know," she said under her breath, "some patients don't wake up, and some don't even make it to their next dosage." She adjusted his IV line and turned her back. Jackson's mind screamed. He had no way of knowing what she'd just administered, or whether it was safe. But now that Emily knew the truth, the game had changed. He wasn't just lying in wait anymore. He was counting the seconds until he could strike back. Emily barely slept that night. She kept replaying Marlene's face in her head, the false smile, the calculated words. Some patients don't wake up. It wasn't just a passing comment. It was a threat. By the time she arrived at the hospital for her shift the next day, she'd made up her mind. She wasn't just going to protect Jackson, she was going to expose everyone involved, no matter what it cost her. Before clocking in, she took a detour to the administrative wing, sliding an envelope under the head nurse's door. Inside were printed screenshots of Jackson's voice memos, a copy of the drug inventory log she'd been tracking, and a handwritten summary of what she'd witnessed over the past 3 weeks. She didn't sign it, she didn't need to. With that done, she headed straight for room 407. Jackson looked the same as ever, still, pale and serene. But Emily had no doubt he was fully aware of everything. "I submitted more evidence today," she whispered. "Someone will read it, they have to." She checked his vitals, scanning the IV bag carefully. Nothing seemed unusual, but she decided to change it anyway, just in case. If Marlene was dosing him with something extra, she wasn't going to let it happen again. That's when she heard it, the soft click of heels in the hallway. Emily stepped to the door just in time to see Vanessa Langford turning the corner, her designer handbag swinging at her side. Vanessa knocked once and stepped inside like she owned the place. "Emily," she said coolly, her eyes scanning the room. "Still here?" Emily forced a polite smile. "Yes, just wrapping up Mr. Carter's chart." "Good. He's had too many unfamiliar faces lately. I don't want any unnecessary stress." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Stress? From lying in a coma?" Vanessa's eyes narrowed, but she didn't reply. Emily took that as her cue to leave, but she lingered in the hallway, pretending to chart notes on her tablet while she listened through the slightly ajar door. Vanessa's voice dropped. "Jackson, You really are holding on, aren't you? I guess your stubbornness doesn't stop, even like this. There was silence, then a cruel laugh. But you're running out of time. Gregory said the paperwork's almost done. Once you're declared permanently incapacitated, your assets go into our control. It's all going to work out beautifully. Emily's fingers tightened around the tablet. She wanted to burst in, scream at Vanessa, tell her she knew everything, but that would blow everything up too soon. Instead, she slipped away quietly and rushed to the nurse's lounge, where she pulled out her phone and hit record. Vanessa wasn't going to get away with this. Neither was Gregory, and definitely not Marlene. Jackson couldn't hear the full conversation between Vanessa and Emily, but he knew the air had shifted. The tension between the two women was palpable, even from where he lay motionless in his bed. Every day it seemed like the walls were closing in faster, and every moment the stakes grew higher. But there was something Emily didn't know. Jackson was ready to make his move. His mind had been working on a plan for days now. He couldn't let Vanessa or Gregory win. He couldn't let them manipulate him any longer. With Emily's courage, they were close, but he needed to move faster. It was late in the evening when Emily returned to room 407, her face tight with determination. She had a new plan, one that she hadn't shared with anyone, not even Jackson. She was going to confront the people behind the scheme head-on. No more waiting, no more hiding. "Mr. Carter," Emily whispered as she checked his vitals again, "I have something for you." She took a small item from her pocket and placed it carefully next to his hand, a tiny recorder. It wasn't much, but it was enough to capture everything. She had borrowed it from the security office earlier, her heart pounding as she passed through the quiet halls. She hadn't dared approach the main security cameras for fear of being caught, but she'd managed to get the recorder without anyone noticing. "I'm going to put it in Marlene's pocket when she comes in for her next round," Emily continued, her voice barely audible. "I know where she keeps the stolen drugs. Once I've got the proof, I'll take it straight to the police." Jackson's chest tightened with hope. He wanted to tell her to be careful, to warn her that things were going to get dangerous, but he had no voice. His only power was the stillness of his body. Still, Emily was his ally, and together they might just have a shot at bringing everything down. But just as Emily started to leave, the door swung open. Marlene walked in with a tray of medications, her eyes locking onto Emily's for a long, uncomfortable moment. "Leaving already, Emily?" Marlene asked, her voice smooth, almost too smooth. Emily froze, but her resolve never wavered. "Just finishing up for the night." Marlene didn't seem to buy it. She stepped closer to Jackson's bed, adjusting his IV line with deliberate slowness. Jackson felt his pulse quicken. He had to stay calm. He couldn't risk Marlene seeing any signs of life. "So, I hear you've been talking to the higher-ups about me," Marlene continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Careful. People who make waves here often end up sinking." Emily's grip on the recorder tightened. Jackson could sense her pulse racing through the air, even though she was trying to remain composed. "I'm just doing my job, Marlene," Emily said evenly, trying to keep her voice from shaking. Marlene smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm sure you are." With a final glance at Emily, she moved to leave, but as she reached the door, she stopped. "I wouldn't be too quick to trust anyone, sweetie. In this place, the only thing that matters is getting ahead. You should learn that." The door shut with a soft click behind her, leaving Emily to breathe a heavy sigh of relief, but she knew this was only the beginning. Marlene wouldn't stop, and neither would Gregory or Vanessa. The pieces were finally in place. Emily was about to confront them all, but she wasn't going to do it alone. Jackson Carter had made his decision. The moment he woke up, the game would be over. The hospital was eerily quiet that night, the hum of machines and distant footsteps echoing through the sterile halls. Jackson could feel the weight of everything closing in, the plans, the lies, the deceit. But more than anything, he felt the growing urgency inside him. It was time to end this. He had been faking it for long enough to hear the whispers, to catch the lies, and now, to expose the people who thought they could use him for their own gain. Vanessa, Gregory, Marlene. They had no idea how close they were to being exposed, no idea that Jackson was about to take control of everything. Emily had played her part. Now it was Jackson's turn. His eyes flickered open, just slightly, the faintest trace of life returning to his gaze. His fingers twitched ever so slightly under the blanket, and his chest rose and fell with a controlled, steady breath. Slowly, carefully, he became aware of everything once again. Minutes passed, then an hour. He lay motionless, pretending to still be asleep. His mind was sharp, his body stiff from the long periods of immobility. But the feeling of power that came with knowing his enemies were near and unaware was a rush he couldn't explain. Emily had done the hard part. She'd gathered evidence, kept him informed, and now with the recorder in place, it was time to make the final move. Jackson's mind worked quickly. He knew the players. He knew their weaknesses. But what he needed was the perfect opportunity. It was going to take every ounce of patience he had left. Then, just as he'd planned, the door to his room opened again. It was Marlene. She entered quietly, glancing around with a wary eye. She stepped toward Jackson's bed, her face settling into its usual mask of faux concern. But Jackson could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes. She wasn't sure if he was faking it anymore. "Mr. Carter," she said softly, almost sweetly, "how are we doing tonight? Feeling any better?" There was a slight pause, and Jackson could almost hear the anxiety in her voice. She moved closer, checking his vitals, her movements quick and precise, as if she were in a rush. Jackson knew why. Emily had done her job. She had planted the recorder in Marlene's pocket. Now it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. The door creaked open again. Emily. She stepped in without hesitation, her eyes flicking briefly to Jackson before settling on Marlene. "I need to check the medication logs," Emily said, her voice steady. "Can you please leave?" Marlene stiffened. "I'm the one handling Mr. Carter tonight." Emily didn't back down. "I'm his primary nurse, remember? I'm just going to double-check his chart." The tension in the room thickened. Jackson kept his breathing steady, trying not to give away the fact that he was now fully aware. He could feel the heat of the moment, the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. He could feel his future shifting, but he had to remain still just a little longer. Marlene's eyes flicked nervously toward the door. She was cornered now. She had to make a choice. Would she continue her facade and risk exposure, or would she fold under the pressure? "Fine," she snapped, clearly agitated, "but I'm watching you." With that, she spun on her heel and stormed out, her footsteps retreating down the hall. As soon as the door closed, Emily turned to Jackson, her expression a mix of relief and determination. "It's done, Mr. Carter. They've been caught. The recorder is with security. Marlene's been swiping medications, and I've got the evidence of her involvement. The higher-ups are going to take it seriously now." Jackson's heart pounded in his chest, but he couldn't let his guard down just yet. There was one final step to this, one last battle to fight. With Emily's help, he was going to confront Gregory and Vanessa, force them to see the consequences of their actions. They had played their games for far too long. Now it was time to make them pay. "I'll wake up soon," Jackson whispered, his voice a rasp from disuse. He couldn't make his body move yet, but his mind was alive with the knowledge that the end was near. "And when I do, everything changes." Jackson blinked slowly, the light from the hospital room blinding his sensitive eyes. The coolness of the room, the sterile scent of antiseptic, all of it flooded his senses. And then, something else. A sharp gasp. "Mr. Carter?" Emily's voice was thick with disbelief. It shook, but her joy was unmistakable. She rushed to his side, her hand trembling as she touched his. "Mr. Carter, you're awake. You're really awake." Her voice cracked, and for a second Jackson could see the tears in her eyes. Tears he had no doubt had been holding back for so long. He blinked again, trying to focus. It's time. He could barely move, but his mind was racing. Everything is about to change. "Emily." His voice was barely a whisper, but it was enough. Is it done?" She paused, her breath catching in her throat. Then she smiled, her expression a mix of triumph and relief. "It's done," she whispered. "The evidence is out. Everything's been exposed. Marlene, Gregory, Vanessa, they're all being investigated. The drug tampering, the money laundering, all of it. "It's over, Mr. Carter. They're not going to get away with it." Jackson's heart beat faster, but the strain on his body was still too much. He couldn't quite sit up, couldn't fully control his limbs just yet, but the weight in his chest lightened. He could already imagine the fallout. He could already hear the sirens, see the officers entering the hospital, taking those responsible away. But there was one thing left. The door to his room opened, and Jackson could hear footsteps echoing on the hard floors. He knew who it was before the door even fully opened. Vanessa Langford stepped into the room, her high heels clicking on the tile as she approached with an air of false concern. She froze when she saw Emily standing by the bed. Jackson's eyes wide open, fully aware. For a moment, her face flickered with disbelief, but she quickly masked it with a tight, forced smile. Well, she said, her voice sickly sweet. "Look who finally decided to join us." Her eyes flicked over to Emily, and Jackson could see the venom she held just below the surface. "What a surprise. I'd hoped for a more peaceful outcome, but I see that's not in the cards." "Don't pretend," Emily shot back, her voice strong and unwavering. "The evidence is out. You thought you could control everything. Jackson's fortune, his life. But you were wrong. It's over." Vanessa stiffened. Jackson could hear the slight crack in her voice as she tried to regain control. "You're making a mistake, Emily," she said, her voice low, almost pleading now. "You don't understand the bigger picture. What you've done is going to cause chaos. I have resources you can't even comprehend." Emily took a step forward. "You don't have resources anymore. We've got the proof. The hospital's already begun investigating your involvement. They'll be reviewing everything." At that moment, Gregory entered, his cold eyes scanning the room. When he saw Jackson's eyes open, his face contorted with anger. "So it's true," he muttered, clenching his fists. "You're awake, Carter. You think you've won? You think you've beaten us?" Jackson's heart raced, adrenaline coursing through his veins. His body was still weak, but his mind was clear. The time for silence was over. "I haven't won yet," Jackson said, his voice raspy but full of authority. "But you have lost. All of you." He forced himself to sit up, the room spinning for a moment as he did. But he wasn't backing down. "You thought you could control me, steal from me, and manipulate everyone around you. But you failed." Vanessa and Gregory exchanged a glance, but there was no more bravado in their eyes. Jackson could see the fear creeping in. "I'll be going to the police soon," Jackson continued, his voice gaining strength, "and I'll make sure you pay for what you've done. Every single one of you." Marlene, who had been watching from the door, stepped forward as well, her face pale. She had been caught in the web too. She looked guilty, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Mr. Carter," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Jackson's gaze didn't soften. "It's too late for apologies, Marlene. You were part of the scheme. You'll answer for it." The police sirens could be heard in the distance now, getting closer. Jackson's plan was in motion, and it was only a matter of time before the authorities arrived to handle the rest. As Vanessa and Gregory stood there, their facade crumbling, Jackson couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph, not just for himself, but for everyone they had wronged. They had underestimated him. They had underestimated Emily, and now the truth was out. This was his victory. Jackson Carter's awakening was not just the return of a man from a coma. It was the unraveling of a web of deceit spun by those who thought they could control him. With Emily's unwavering help and the evidence she uncovered, the criminals who thought they could manipulate him were exposed, their lies shattered. Jackson took back his life, and with it, his power to bring justice to those who had wronged him. But this victory wasn't just about revenge. It was about truth, redemption, and the strength to stand up for what's right, no matter the odds. If you enjoyed Jackson's story and the twists and turns of his journey to justice, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more incredible stories. Stay tuned for more riveting tales of redemption, courage, and the power of truth. Share this with friends who love a good drama, and leave a comment below letting us know what part of Jackson's journey resonated with you the most.